Hey, what up, card fighters? BEOTCG here, and in the same vein where I went over Luard, my thoughts on Luard, my personal build on Luard, I kind of wanted to go over more so like the standard, or at least like the cards that you're clearly going to see in the Shiranui deck right now in this current format before Triple Drive Booster, before Divine Z comes out, because this deck will still be a meta contender when Divine Z comes out. That's no question, my personal opinion. But yeah, it really... like, it kind of has a high roll aspect, because obviously you're not guaranteed to see the cards, even though you have a lot of windows and opportunities to see the Shoujo Doji cards, but it has like a slight high roll aspect to it, and I wanted to kind of go over, like, not necessarily like the deck's weaknesses, because I feel like it does have, like, there's some things that you can do that the deck isn't going to want you to do, but it's more of like, the best way to beat Shiranui is to just kind of like keep up tempo with it and just try and hit them as hard as they're hitting you, in my personal opinion. But getting on to the main deck list of what I believe you're going to see in every Shiranui deck, the grade 2 of the Shoujo Doji ride line, I have thought of that if this was like a more balanced format, that there was other decks that were as strong as Shiranui is, like in all stages of the game, I would consider running the original G2. That it just gives you like better, it gives you like better going, you're going second turns on your first stride, but you just get so much value off the grade 2 of the Shoujo Doji ride line that you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you're not playing it. Even if your opponent doesn't give you any food to dominate when you do your first stride. I just feel like you've already won the tempo game, that you can kind of take a turn off and just like hit them with a triple drive turn. 2 copies of Oboro in the main deck. It's searchable. You do want to go into Mukuro. You want to, generally you're more often than not going into Magen Tembu, but you do want to go into Mukuro. You just get so much value off of Mukuro in this deck just because you keep those drive checks. Like you're drive checking 5 times in that turn, and you get to keep those extra 2 cards, like for no discard cost at all. So there's just like so much value in that. Playing 4 copies of Peeling Dragon, just like the grade 3 discard fodder, and it also gives you access to retire, even though you don't get the shield value, which, to be honest, with the stride decks, that the fact that the discard cards don't give you the shield value is pretty freaking fair, considering like the stride, like Shiranui in general. I feel like you want to close out the game as soon as possible, because the longer the game goes, the more likely that the Shiranui player is going to be the victor, just because of how like the G Zone's power scaling works. And the fact that they have access to 8 main deck multi-attack enablers. 4 copies of Izato. This is the grade 2 that it only works when you're on Shoujo Doji, so it only really works on your turn 2, and this is where I was telling you that you have like a slight high roll aspect to the deck, because whereas the grade 2 Shoujo Doji gives you the top 5 check, so you're able to look for this, but or like hard draw into it, but this gives you so much value. Like top 5 to add any stealth, you could add perfect guards, you could add like literally you have access to basically all your key cards in the entire deck. You could get this off of itself, and then if you have another counterblast, you could trigger it again. So it's just like an amazing like early game enabler. Like, I wouldn't know how to hit this deck without killing this deck, because I feel like the creation of how this deck works and the creation of Angel Ladder kind of creates it's a lot of creates. It kind of makes for unfun like games, or like kind of like non-games, to whereas you're playing against the dominate player and you're not having fun because they're hitting you in the mouth to like seven attacks, or 7 attacks minimum. Or the dominate player isn't having fun because you just hit Angel Ladder on them, and it kind of just like negates their entire deck for a turn. And that could be like, depending on like how good your deck is, that could be the turn that you needed to just kill your opponent the next one. 4 copies of Sekai. He's the multi-attacker that if you have 2 or more face up, he gets 10k and you get to draw a card. This is the multi-attacker that gets pumped for every dominate you did that turn. 4 copies of Katsugitsune. This is the Stride Fodder / Searcher for Shiranuis. 4 copies of Tenri. Now, shoutouts to Richard. I do have a buddy at Locals that he wasn't playing Tenri. He was actually playing a Shoujo Doji card that allowed him to, like, basically gain infinite soul. And I really do like the fact that he has, like, that kind of, like, infinite resource of soul. But, just being able to draw a card and just bouncing it back to your hand as a 5k shield or potentially using it again, in my opinion, is just, like, really good. And I felt like the soul... This deck doesn't really have a problem with soul, in my personal opinion, just because you already soul charge so much off of your ride line and off of another unit card of the stealths that you're just, like, really abusing is Forktail. So you just have so much soul charging already that that card really didn't feel necessary. So I would just rather have the extra draw that can also be used in the early game. 3 stealth PGs and then 1 blitz order PG. This is searchable off of the grade 2 Isfarto, which is really nasty that you're able to just auto add PGs to your hand. Only on turn 2, but it's still really nasty. 4 normal heal triggers. You can play restand heals for the mirror if you really wanted to. 4 normal crits. 4 into soul crits. 3 fronts. Now, in my opinion, this deck already does, like, a lot of deck thinning and a lot of drawing that you don't really need the draws. And I was, like, playing against it, it didn't feel like it needed the draws. I felt like the fronts were just better, especially in those early stages of the game, just hitting those fronts. Or just having that 20k shield really matters. Like, your deck is already so good as it is. Like, you know a deck is really good if it's playing fronts. In my personal opinion, if you could just, like, play fronts, like, your deck is already pretty much insane. Like, without, like, any negatives. And then 1 of the Dragon Empire OT. The Dragon Empire OT is really nasty in this deck just because the multi-attackers aren't once per turn or aren't hard once per turn, which I guess is another way that they could theoretically hit this deck if it's too good for too long, because that's usually how Bushi hits decks, that if it's like if there's too many people playing it for too long, that's when they decide to hit a deck, no matter if it's the best deck or not. That they can either make it so you can't play the Shoujo Doji grade 2 of the ride line, or they could just make that the restanders are hard once per turns, I guess, or like has like that little once per turn semicolon, but I'm not sure. I just feel like the only way that this deck is going to get out of here is power creep, because that's usually how it happens. Like, that's what happened with Jet. It just, like, you know, it just got out of here with power creep. But yeah, guys, like, my only, like, thing that I would tell you guys is how do you beat this deck is you just have to kind of, like, play at a faster pace or play at the same pace as the Shiranui player. If they are going second and you're able to, like, still do a good turn without giving them any food for dominate, that's really good. But sometimes you just have to, like, let them dominate you, because their first stride turn, their first dominate turn isn't really that strong. They don't have strong like restand attackers. They're going to be hitting for like 15, 20 or 25 the most, but they're not really that strong. So if you, like, overextend a little bit just to push a little bit more damage, I would say go ahead and do it. But yeah, that's, like, the only real advice I can give you. There's no, like, real counterplay besides, like, if you can play a deck that can bully their board, like, just, like, can pressure them and bully their board at the same time without having them need to have a board in order to pressure them. Like Gandiva, for example, I thought was a good matchup. I spec'd it as a good matchup. That's why I tested it, and it just turned out not to be at all, because Gandiva cares too much about having to retire your opponent's board versus, like, just being able to play the game and happen to clearing your opponent's board. But yeah, guys, that's it for this Shiranui deck analysis / deck profile. Don't forget me to like and comment down below. We're really close to that 1K, and when we do, we're going to do that giant playmat giveaway, guys. So yeah, without further ado, y'all have a great night. Later.